Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Splintering Ice. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5, entitled Securing. 1 week before. Before the man came to UA, Aizawa can't really say he knew All Might very well. Sure, he had worked with him before, not exactly directly due to their vastly different styles of heroics, but it was a bit difficult to avoid working with him when the man was known for showing up at the last moment to save large amounts of people. It was aggravating, to a certain extent. His showmanship, his demeanor even. Most of the time, Aizawa couldn't stand it. Couldn't understand his mindset when it came to his decisions or how he conducted his work. Even so, there was respect. Lots of it. For obvious reasons. Anyone who put themselves in a position of possible harm for someone else was given Aizawa's respect, even if they were also given his condemnation of stupidity for being reckless at the same time. That's the exact position Yagi had found himself in for numerous years up until Kamino. After that, it was just strange. "You want me to what?" Yagi splutters, and Aizawa only offers him an unimpressed look in return. "You heard me." "Well, yes," All Might says, rubbing the back of his head. His paperwork lies forgotten in front of him, a cursor on his computer blinking in one spot on his unfinished document, rubrics of the last Foundational Hero Studies class assignment. "I was more asking why, I suppose." Aizawa sighs, leaning back in his own desk chair and staring up at the ceiling. "We need another chaperone for the trip. I already got Mike to agree, as if he needed much goading. So it'd be the three of us if you're up for it." Yagi blinks. "Wouldn't they want someone more, capable? For security purposes?" Yagi's expecting another unimpressed look, the same look he seems to be on the receiving end more often than not. Instead, he gets more of a surprised look, like he had just condemned Hero Society as a whole, instead of asking a simple question. Yagi feels the need to shrink down under the gaze, but he doesn't. "Why wouldn't you be capable?" Now All Might is the one to give an unimpressed look, grimacing tiredly at Aizawa. "Come on now, Aizawa. Do I really need to spell it out for you?" Aizawa quirks an eyebrow. Yagi can feel the stare of Nomuri from across the room, trying to hide behind her computer monitor, but ultimately failing. Okay, apparently he does. "I'm basically quirkless now. A chaperone position would be better suited to someone else, like Midnight." The called-out woman ducks further behind her computer. "Sorry, I can't. Class 3C has a planned test for one of the days Aizawa and Nezu had picked out for the trip. Plus, I agreed to sub for Mike." All Might gives her a tired look, turning back to Aizawa. "My point still stands." Aizawa shrugs. "Regardless, I don't need you there for security or anything. The facility has plenty of that, including a few pro-heroes on site as well. There's more to being a teacher at UA than fighting threats, you realize." Aizawa pauses, considering his words. "Or a hero, for that matter." Yagi gapes at him. "Aizawa, are you being comforting?" Nomuri snorts from behind her monitor. "The man's a softie, don't let him fool you." Aizawa rolls his eyes. "Besides, if you really look at it, I'm practically quirkless of vast majority of the time, especially against mutation quirks. And most people are quirkless when fighting against me." Yagi doesn't respond, only smiles, thinking of multiple conversations he has had in the past, some ending with regrettable answers. "Thank you, Aizawa," Yagi says, leaning back over his keyboard and continuing his grading. "I'd love to chaperone with you and Mike on the trip." Aizawa groans, standing from his desk and swiping up some folders. "Don't get gushy with me." I should have never said anything. Yagi can't stop the small smile on his face from widening slightly. In the sudden hyper-focused nature of Shota's task, he only feels numb. Numb to the burning in his lower legs and arms and now bare fingers. Numb to the thrumming of his heartbeat and his broken nose. To the ache in his ribcage, even to the biting cold against his face. His breaths come in hefty huffs that fog out in front of his face with every exhale, and his legs move on instinct, one after the other. A stumble, really. Uncoordinated and clumsy, but he stays on his feet and wades through the thick snow even so. He isn't even sure if he can feel his feet anymore. He tries not to think about it. The lights become brighter with every step, and the weight in his arms becomes heavier with each as well. The task is arduous and everlasting. Halfway from where Midoriya passed out, and the building, Shota's fairly certain he allows his brain to become numb as well. It's always been easier like that. to get through the task at hand and then let the processing begin. So he does just that, eyes set on the lights ahead and definitely not on the pale face, blooming with vibrant and sickly colors across it, hanging limply from his elbow. The lights are white, making the blizzard's density even more obvious. It ignites the white snow around the building, creating a wall of white rather than the unseeing endlessness from earlier. Somewhere, Shota's fairly certain, the sun began lowering in the sky. There's 4 lights that Shota can make sense of, and if this building is just like the one he was stationed at, then the door would be in between the 2 central lights. Looking ahead, squinting against the flakes falling into his eyes, it's obvious that the door is not on the side they're on. Fucking great. Shota grumbles as best as he's able through numbed lips, hefting Midoriya closer. He's losing his strength. He's been able to tell for a while now, at least the past mile he's had to walk since their last pit stop to get Midoriya's breathing situation all taken care of. He can still hear the echoing rasp from within the mask. Anyways, Shota shakes his head. Focus, damn it. Don't get caught up on the kid's condition anymore, not yet. Safety first. Warmth first. The point being, the kid has obviously been getting heavier as the minutes tick on, and Shota isn't sure if that's just Midoriya's weight slowly turning more and more into dead weight, or if it's Shota's own endurance wearing thin. Probably a mix of both, if he were to guess. Shota gets within a few feet of the building, close enough to see the details of the brickwork patterns along the side. He stumbles around it, noting how the other side didn't have a door either, which meant, when he turned the next corner, door. It's so simple and yet it's hilarious how Shota immediately feels the word playing on repeat in his head. Door, 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 door. He almost falls to his knees right there, hoping that maybe All Might will see them laying out in the snow from one of the cameras in a few seconds tops, assuming he's doing something else inside, and come fish them out of the sea of white somehow. No, he can't. They can't wait, and they can't risk not being seen at all, until it's too late. How he even considered that an option? Just a few more feet, damn it. Just a few more feet. God, he wished he had his sleeping bag. Shota practically face-plants against the door, legs shaking beneath him in the now shallow snow around him. The depth, the result of the building blocking the vast majority of the torrent. Midoriya's shoulder is the only thing that prevents him from full-on falling against the door, crammed against the cold surface and successfully propping the older man up. Shota sighs heavily, pushing Midoriya's knees to the door with his body weight. It frees up his right hand, and, ignoring how the limb shakes almost dramatically, Shota reaches and knocks as loud as he can manage 3 times. He would yell, too, but he isn't very convinced he has that in him right now. He leaves Midoriya like that, legs crushed between Shota's body weight and the doorway. Shota instead uses his free hand to quickly and tenderly flick frozen curls out of Midoriya's face, using his fingers to brush off some of the buildup of snow on his cheeks as well. It shouldn't be there. It's wrong. Anything cold touching the boy at this point is wrong, and Shota feels almost angry at the sight of all the snow covering the kid's clothes and hair. It's just terrible. So bad. The doorknob twists slowly, and it's a testament to how slow Shota's thinking has become, that the almost sneaky way of it twisting doesn't strike him as odd. The next moment definitely does, though. The door rips open, the bright lights from inside forcing Shota to squint. He stumbles backwards, unintentionally letting Midoriya's feet and legs fall to the ground. The next moment, there in the doorway stands All Might, his hulking form. It's rarely seen now, but it has the same imposing effect as ever before. Eyes overshadowed and angry look in his eyes. In that same moment, Shota has twisted his body around, still able to see All Might perfectly well, but also able to use his own body to shield Midoriya. His hand clasps the kid's head to his chest, the other one tangled in the clothing atop his abdomen. At a later date, Shota might think back on the moment and wonder why exactly he reacted as he did. It was obvious the older man didn't know it was them, but somewhere in his fogged mind, Shota saw the flash of a hulking villain, hand reaching out towards them, ready to deliver wounds that they had inflicted on the enemy first. He hadn't thought. He had just moved. He shakes the thought away. All Might's eyes widen, and then all Shota can see is steam floating around them. Aizawa. Shota says nothing. He exhales heavily and practically deflates, slumping against nothingness and feeling his grip on the kid lessen exponentially. Oh my! All Might exclaims, clasping Shota's shoulder firmly. Shota glances sideways at the man. His golden hair is being swept wildly by the wind, snow already catching in it in the few moments he's been outside. His hollowed blue eyes are locked on Shota's own, squinting due to the blizzard. Shota can empathize, obviously. He notes, however, how the older man definitely does not see the kid half hanging in Shota's arms. Not yet, anyway. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't see who was at the door through the monitors. Too much snow. Thought you might have been—" Shota can see the exact moment All Might is finally able to recognize Midoriya. His eyes scrunch up, gaze glancing around Shota curiously. He probably sees the green, Shota guesses, since Midoriya's face is pressed against Shota's own shoulder. The chill of his respirator, biting cold burns along his neck. He would hiss if he wasn't so focused in keeping the black spots in his vision at bay. All Might's eyes grow so large, Shota is pretty confident he's able to see some of the white of them. His mouth drops open, his face appearing so much more hollow than normal. It's as if a flip switches in All Might's mind, some instinctual sense he developed long ago that couldn't go away, even in retirement. Like sirens going off in his head, telling him to move. His eyes narrow and he grabs a fistful of Shota's sleeve, and the green fabric of Midoriya's back, and somehow manages to yank both of them past the door's threshold and into the warmth of the shelter, even with his limited strength. Shota forces his feet to move with All Might's guiding hand around his bicep. He had pushed himself to keep moving outside with a solid point in front of him, motivated only by the waning weight in his arms, now slipping from his grasp more and more with each passing second. Midoriya's feet scrape against the ground as both he and All Might grapple with him. Black pushes further into Shota's vision, the shivers running up and down his body, making themselves more known in comparison to All Might's still and warm body. Even so, Shota manages to get some form of a coherent thought out. Shota's voice comes out in a nasty croak, so he tries again. "Get the door." All Might, for all he annoys Shota on a day-to-day basis, obliges without comment. He releases Shota and rushes past, fighting the wind as he pushes the door closed and as Shota drags his feet further into the living space. Tall ceilings, computer monitors grouped together in the corner on a desk that show the security feed from the cameras spread around this area of the mountain. An uncomfortable-looking couch and armchair directly in front of a fireplace. The floors are concrete, and the walls match, everything reinforced to withstand pretty much anything, whether it be quirks, the weather, or an avalanche of some kind. On the far side of the room is the doorways to two other rooms, probably where the building's storage is, as well as the bathroom and kitchen area. It's identical to the outpost he was stationed in, the one where all his stuff is. God. What he would give to have a sleeping bag with him now. For Midoriya, if not himself too. They both could probably fit in the thing. Before he can give warning to Yagi, Shota has collapsed to his knees, Midoriya's weight dragging him further down. He drops the kid, as gently as he can manage, before completely keeling forward onto his forearms, bowed over Midoriya's still form, shivers racking his body. He can hear Yagi swear a few times, can sense the older man scrabbling about around him and Midoriya. There's a sudden gentle yet secure pressure on his shoulder. "Zawa." It's All Might. Yagi, gripping his shoulders and speaking loud and clear, and for some reason this doesn't seem odd to Aizawa. It's like how he spoke before his powers had dwindled to nothing, when he was still the #1 hero. "Can you hear me?" Aizawa nods. "Yeah, just needed a moment." And then Yagi is gone. Ish. Shota knows somewhere in his mind that the blonde man is actually just fluttering around the area, trying to piece together a game plan. Firewood tumbles from a neat stack to his left side, and only moments later they're being chucked into the fireplace, tugged around by All Might's bare hand. He apparently didn't have a fire going before they got there, or else he wouldn't be able to touch it. Shota pushes himself backwards away from Midoriya, though he can't tell how far away. He can't quite tell exactly what he ends up landing on either, but throws out a wild guess that it's the couch or the armchair. His back presses against the cushions while his shivering body leaves a puddle around him on the concrete floor. His hair hangs in his face in frozen clumps, snow falling from it every few seconds, adding to the wet spot he's managed to make. God. Okay. He needs to focus. The black spots have taken up the vast majority of his vision now, his eyelids heavy and fighting against his stubbornness to stay awake. He wasn't done yet. He still had work to do, even if All Might, Yagi, whoever the fuck was there to assist now. All he can see is the outlines of the room in front of him, blobs of colors bleeding into one another. He knows his eyes are wide open because he can feel his dry eyes screaming at him, even if he can't actually make sense of the sights in front of him. He can hear echoes of something too, low droning. He can't tell what, though. He inhales and exhales repeatedly, long and drawn out, trying to bid away the darkness, and it works to a certain degree. Spots still dance in his vision, and he feels the weight over him still, tugging his eyelids down, but the scene in front of him starts becoming clearer. The sounds around him also come back to him, still echoing, sounding far away, like he was in a completely different room from them, even though, as he focuses, he knows that the source is right in front of him. My goodness, young Midoriya! All Might's voice parries through various emotions all the time, both in this form and his more energetic one. But Shota can't say he's heard the certain shakiness from the older hero like this very much, if at all. What happened to you, my boy? Can you hear me? Midoriya. All Might is kneeled next to Midoriya, hands outstretched and looking like he's completely lost as to what to do. His hand comes to rest gently on the respirator sitting on Midoriya's face, glistening in the small fire only feet from the kid's head. He grips the respirator, turning it, and Midoriya's face slowly from side to side examining him. He rips his hand away almost immediately, though, rubbing his fingers together. The biting cold of metal. The older hero's brow furrows. He reaches for the mask again with the clear goal to remove the offending piece of metal from the kid's face on his mind. Shota tries to speak in that moment. He isn't sure why, maybe to explain the situation or direct the man or anything, but nothing comes out of his throat but a low croak that isn't really audible at all. All Might removes the mask with a disgusting suction pop, pushing the strap off of his head and setting the thing on the ground beside Midoriya's head. It's left an angry red, raw ring around Midoriya's mouth and nose, skin practically peeled off upon removal. And All Might's face completely crumbles at that, and he leans forward, gently tapping the sickly cheek. Izuku? Shota understands, really. He's had the past however long to understand what needs to be done and act in order to accomplish it, but All Might has been unexpectedly thrown into the middle of this. He hadn't even been aware of Midoriya's group being attacked, as far as Shota's aware, unless he and Mike had been in contact while Shota was working on getting himself and Midoriya to shelter. Regardless, now is the time for action, not emotion. Shota wets his chapped lips, clearing his throat. All Might. The retired hero seems to have not heard him, tapping Midoriya's face lightly, his own face mere inches from the kid's purple nose. His eyes were wide, unblinking as the older man searches for any sort of reaction. His other hand, the one not tapping rapidly against the pale cheek of their student, is gripping Midoriya's limp hand tightly. Shota sucks in a deep breath, forcing himself into a straighter posture despite his trembling arms and everything. Yagi. Hesitantly, All Might's gaze switches from Midoriya's still form to Shota, catching his eyes. Shota takes a split second to just recall all the moments he had observed the older man and Midoriya, questions about truth of their relationship, about how the number one hero knew the young, timid Midoriya from Aldera Junior High. All those questions seem to pale in comparison to the sudden realization that, whatever that relationship is, it's clearly strong. All Might's teeth are clenched, veins popping out at his temple and jawline. His eyes are wide and yet scrunched around the edges, face paler than the normally tanned skin. Shota forces himself to ignore all the telltale signs of obvious distress. Blankets. First aid. Now. His teeth chatter, his shoulders quiver, and so does his voice, but even so, Shota forces as much strength as he can into the 3 simple words that are pushed from his mouth. It seems to work. Understanding dawns on All Might's face, and the older man literally shakes himself, backing up from Midoriya and quickly ripping off his suit jacket. His movements are fast and considerate as he fluffs out the jacket and drapes it over Midoriya, tucking it in around him, particularly delicate around the wrapped arm. All Might hesitates only a moment before shooting to his feet, tapping Shota's shoulder once in reassurance before dashing off somewhere to find the first aid kit. Being on top of a mountain would almost guarantee that their first aid kits would have plenty for hypothermia treatment. Plus, All Might and himself had experienced enough with first aid, even if hypothermia was a rarity among their experiences. First response was part of the job, and even if this instance was far more personal than most others, they at least had an idea of what to do. Shota can faintly hear the clattering of materials as All Might digs around for the kit in the other room. He ignores it, rolling himself forward and crawling on his hands and knees toward the kid. Midoriya hasn't moved a muscle since they got there. Well, actually, since he fainted in the snow, however long ago that was. His face is a strange mishmash of splashes of colors. Purples along his nose and eyelids, blues on his lips, red painting his cheeks and forehead. The ring of raw skin around his mouth shimmers red in the firelight. His pallor, everywhere else, could compete with the snow billowing outside. His breathing is obviously more labored without the respirator, but not dangerously so. They're going to need to put it back on, but probably after warming it up considerably and washing it. Shota sighed shakily, coming to a stop by Midoriya's feet. Hang on, problem child. You've dealt with worse than this. Has he? God, he remembers the sports festival, how the kid snapped his fingers as bones like they were nothing over and over again with little more than a flinch each time. That was hard to watch. He thought Mike was going to puke a few times during that round. And then there was the training camp, a nightmare through and through. And of course the entrance exam, nearly the beginning of it all. Still, all of those times had technically been the kid's own fault, self-destructive, unable to control it, or simply not wanting to, actually. A discipline problem? Shota didn't think that was quite right, but it was definitely something. As though he had never used the quirk before. As though he didn't care what happened to him when he was put into precarious positions. The idiot. Shota manages to get both of Midoriya's shoes off, fumbling with the straps and hooks that keep the iron soles on them. He tosses them away haphazardly, crawling further up and pulling All Might's jacket down slightly to get to his arm brace. He only has to worry about one of them, the other one having been decimated by the uncoordinated attack from a student that had been flung under the ice. Granted, this wasn't like those instances at all. This was an attack, something the kid shouldn't be having to deal with as much as he has at his age. Shota was there. He was within reach and still couldn't prevent it, so it most definitely was not the kid's fault. And he was pretty sure, begrudgingly so, that he was going to have to tell Midoriya so plenty of times when he wakes up. Sometimes, things like this just happen. No way to stop it. What matters is what is done after. I've got it. All Might is suddenly back, setting down a red box with a white plus on the top, along with a folded thermal blanket and what looks to be at least 4 wool blankets. Shota only gives the supplies a sideways glance when All Might starts digging through the box, fumbling with the hooks keeping the arm brace secured on the kid's bicep. He grits his teeth, eyes narrowing. His fingers just won't cooperate, burning and numb at the same time, stiffer than he ever remembers them being. A low growl erupts from his throat. His movements become more desperate, just wanting to get the sodden and chilled clothing off of his student before it kills him, damn it. A large hand crosses his vision and rests gently on Shota's wrist. Aizawa, please let me handle young Midoriya. Shota's gaze shoots up to meet All Might's. He finds himself staring into pools of calm blue. The stressed creases at the corner of his eyes are still present, but as though Shota's sudden distress making headway had brought back his calm, in-the-face-of-adversity demeanor, he no longer appears to be lost to anguish any more. Able to focus on a task now, a goal set in mind. Just like Shota had done earlier. Find a goal and pursue it. Let the rest come later. Take care of yourself for now. You're in a poor state as well. With a shaky sigh, Shota relents, releasing the clasps and hooks he had been fumbling with the cuff of Midoriya's brace. All Might hesitates only a moment before focusing on the exact same task. He manages to get the brace off in a matter of seconds, whether it's because of the not-frozen fingers or the fact he somehow understands how they were hooked up better. Shota isn't sure. He pushes himself away, and only pauses when he decides on his first task. He rewinds his capture weapon from around his neck, pulling the cloth close to Midoriya. The last thing he wants to do is try to yank it without realizing it's still attached to the kid in his fogged mind state. That'd be terrible. By the time he's finished, All Might has removed Midoriya's belt and hood, gripping the kid's shoulder as he tries to figure out how he should go about getting the suit zipper in the back. Shota settles himself back at the base of the couch. He can now tell it's a couch. He saw it before backing up. He doesn't have to guess the time. He pulls his foot up, yanking at his boot. It sends a sharp burning sensation up his toes, through his foot, and up to his knee. He hisses, gradually able to get the boot off before resting his now soaked foot on the ground. All Might is still tending to the kid, his handling blending together into a blob of colors rather than exact images. It's good that they have help, that Midoriya has help, that they've made it to shelter, that they're safe and somewhere warm, even if the two of them aren't warm themselves yet. The adrenaline Shota had pumping through his veins has long since diminished, gone. No need for it anymore. And his body reacts in kind. With one boot off clutched in hand, Shota's head and lolls to the side, eyes tugging close to shut, demanding rest, demanding to give in to the conditions he had forced his body to bear for however long they were outside. He had found the villain, found his kid, and gotten them to safety. That was really all there was to it, right? Aizawa? His side hits the floor, head knocking against it hard enough to elicit a small grunt. eye sliding shut immediately after. Aizawa! All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 5 of Splintering Ice. Chapter 6 will be next. We're officially at the halfway point for this fic, because it's only 10 chapters long. Let me know your thoughts and reactions to everything so far. And as always, thank you so much for listening.